Starting off our countdown at number 10 is Frankie Muniz. Most people remember him as Malcolm from the hit TV series Malcolm in the Middle. It was one of the biggest shows on television during its time, and it set the young actor up for a very successful future in Hollywood. He was just 14 years old when he took on the role in the 6-year running sitcom, and even though his career continued to flourish, he randomly vanished from the public eye. After he decided to step away from acting, he went on to work as a professional race car driver, which caused him to suffer from some pretty serious injuries. He's had a fair amount of mini strokes and concussions, and now he suffers from memory loss, which he openly talked about in interviews. As of 2019, he is running an olive oil shop in Arizona with his wife Paige Price. They live normal lives, and Frankie is more than happy with it. He did appear in a film called The Black String in 2018, so people thought he might be back in Hollywood, but he says he just booked some roles for fun because he enjoys it. It is no longer his career path, and he's happy running a business with his lady. He does run a really funny Twitter page though, if you want a good laugh. Up next, number 9 is Kevin Jonas. So we know that the Jonas Brothers have reunited and are back on tour right now, but did you ever wonder what the hell happened to Kevin all of these years? After the group first split up, we saw Nick continue with music and acting, and we also saw Joe pursue a music career as well, but what about Kevin? He kinda just disappeared and did his own thing. We didn't see much of him in the Hollywood spotlight. Like at all. That's because he went from a full-time music career to being a full-time entrepreneur. Throughout those years, he started a company and is the co-CEO of The Blue Market, which is an influencer marketing company. He also formed a partnership with We Heart It, which is a video sharing app, to go hand in hand with his company. When asked why he switched from music to this, he said, "I've always had a passion for the tech industry and I like to help build interesting products." On top of that though, he also got married and is now a full-time dad to 2 beautiful daughters. Some people didn't even know if they'd see him back on tour this time around, but you cannot have the Jonas Brothers without all the brothers. It just ain't right. Although we can all admit that Kevin is kind of useless in that band. Coming in at number 8 is Randy Quaid, one of the Quaid brothers, but probably not the one you are thinking of. His brother Dennis Quaid was actually married to Meg Ryan at one point, so many people think of him first when they think of the brothers. But Randy is still a Golden Globe winner and an Oscar nominee who was once a huge actor in Hollywood, but his last credit was in 2009, and since then he has been living a regular life. Well, that's a lie. He's actually spent all of these years running from the US law enforcement. It started back in September 2009 when he and his wife were both arrested in Texas for leaving an outstanding tab of $10,000 at a California hotel. I don't even know how you get $10,000 tab at a hotel. A year later, they were arrested again for sneaking in and living out of a guest home that they owned years ago but no longer had possession. Court dates and arrests were both set, but they ran off to Canada and hid for years until they were found in 2016. They ended up getting arrested in Vermont while trying to cross the border. He claimed that they had been hiding from a group called Hollywood Star Whackers, which apparently is a dangerous group that engineers the deaths of Hollywood celebrities to somehow embezzle their royalties and life insurance. So yeah, he chose to live a regular life, but clearly just went down a dark path and began living the regular life of a criminal. Sliding to the number 7 spot is Barrett Oliver. He was once a very popular child actor in the 1980s, starring in films like The Neverending Story and Cocoon. But he chose to walk away from the acting scene when he was just 16 years old because he wanted to pursue other opportunities. He ended up finding an interest in photography and went to college to study it. He studied under an artist named Steven Berkman and 2 master photographers named Cole Weston and George Tice, who introduced him to this unique 19th century technique of wet plate photography. From there, he created his own unique style and has spent the last decade giving lectures and hosting his own workshops around the country to promote his craft. Not only is he a photography teacher, but he is also an author. He published a book called A History of the Woodbury Type. Honestly, he seems pretty content with his decision to depart from Hollywood all those years ago. He's chillin', he's cruising. Seems happy. Sliding in the number 6 spot is Rick Moranis. He is a Canadian actor who is well known for his big Hollywood movies like Ghostbusters, Little Shop of Horrors, and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Loved that movie. During the 80s, he was taking over the movie scene one step at a time, but sadly in 1991 his wife passed away from breast cancer, and that's when he decided to retire from acting. He continued to act in the following years, but revealed that it was just too difficult for him to be a single father of his 2 kids, as well as pursue acting. Not to mention, he was still trying to heal from the loss of his wife. life. It wasn't until 1997 that he completely stepped away from the spotlight. In later years, he did return to do some voice acting here or there. Fans thought they might see him in the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot, but he turned down the offer to reprise his role. The former actor is now 66 years old and keeps a pretty low profile. When speaking about his decision to leave acting, he said, I quote, "I was working with really interesting people, wonderful people. I went from that to being at home with a couple of little kids, which is a very different lifestyle, but it was important to me. I have absolutely no regrets whatsoever. My life is wonderful." So, well, as long as he's happy, right? Andy had a good run. He had like a full career by the time he retired. Halfway through the list at number 5 is Phoebe Cates. She was all over the screen in the 1980s, playing the hot girl next door in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. The beautiful brunette was stealing hearts and earned herself the title of a sex symbol, mainly because her character pranced around in a red bikini and was kind of a whore. From there, she continued to book roles, and some people from this generation might recognize her from the Gremlins movies. But from 2001 to 2015, she stayed off the radar for the most part, and we haven't seen much of her. She moved to New York with her husband and 2 children to live a more normal life. When asked about it, she openly says that she retired from acting to raise her children. She also says that she never really enjoyed acting. Well then. In 2005, her career focus turned to fashion and she opened a boutique called Blue Tree. It's this funky general store that sells everything from olive oil to clothing, and apparently they are just all handpicked by her. Olive oil and clothing. That's kind of weird. The store is a huge success, and she admits that sometimes a customer will tell her that she looks like an actress from the 80s, to which she replies, "I get that a lot." Here we are at number 4 with Chris Owen. You would probably know him better as Chuck Sherman, aka the Shermanator. Back in 1999, he made a name for himself for playing the part in the hit comedy American Pie. He ended up reprising the role for all of the films and even landed it in the spin-off American Pie Presents Bandcamp. But he did have other success outside of the franchise and landed roles in shows like Seventh Heaven and The Mentalist. However, his career ended up fading out and he was off the Hollywood radar for a number of years. In 2014, New York Daily News reported that he was working as a waiter in a sushi restaurant in California. Turns out he went on to live a regular life and work what people would call a basic job just compared to his Hollywood life. They contacted him for an interview and he spoke on it saying, "Life doesn't always go the way you planned. I love acting and this job lets me stay in the fight." He admitted that he still tries to book acting roles, but he's also content with living a regular life. The good news is the article helped him book 2 small film roles after it was published. So, it's a win. In the 3rd spot on our countdown list is Tony Danza. He was the Italian heartthrob that captured the attention of his female audience when he first starred in Who's the Boss? But his success started to fade out as he starred in sitcoms that failed to take off, and as time went on, fans started to see less and less of him. It was in 2009 that he left the fame behind and became a 10th grade English teacher in Philadelphia. He did study education when he was younger and said that part of him always wanted to teach, but he wanted to pursue other careers first. He first went with boxing and then later on did the whole Hollywood scene. But he dived into teaching and took it seriously, which is what helped him in his 2010 A&E reality series called Teach Tony Danza. He also wrote a book in 2012 called I'd Like to Apologize to Every Teacher I Ever Had, My Years as a Rookie Teacher at Northeast High. His teaching career only lasted a year at that school, but says that he never felt more at home. During an interview he said, "I just liked the community. I just felt really at home, and not only did they accept me, but I just felt like I was home." But he too has a bit of a comeback story. Since 2012, he has booked 4 roles, but people were thrilled to see him taking on the role in 2018 for the TV series The Good Cop. The actor slash teacher is now 68 years old, and he himself doesn't know where his life is headed. I mean, he could retire at this point, I'm sure, but he's still doing community work in Philadelphia and is working on projects and events with the school that he used to teach at. In spot number 2 is Mara Wilson. She's best remembered for playing Matilda in the 1996 film titled after her character. Kids were quick to fall in love with her character and the magical powers that came with it. In fact, we are still talking about Matilda to this day, and I am still wishing I could make pancakes like she does. Earlier this year, there was a trending game called the Matilda Challenge, which had people making videos of them dancing around a room and pretending to make objects move, just like her iconic scene in the movie. The challenge went so viral that Mara even reacted to them during a video interview. But regardless of how much fun we thought her character was, Marla felt differently about her whole experience. In one of her 2012 blogs, she wrote about it and said she didn't enjoy the acting experience, which is why she left shortly after. After leaving Hollywood, she went on to live a normal life and found a passion for writing. She released a novel in 2016 called Where Am I Now? True Stories of Girlhood and Accidental Fame. We haven't seen her on the big screen in a long time, but she continues to work on screenplays and novels, and if you want to hear what she's up to now from her perspective, just read her book. Filling in our number 1 spot is Daniel Day-Lewis. The actor had fans stunned when he announced in 2017 that he was going to retire from acting. People admired his work for years. He has the title of one of the most respected actors of this generation and one of the greatest actors of all time. Quite the title to live up to. His last role was in The Phantom Thread when he took on the role of Reynolds Woodcock, but he says he didn't know at the time that it was going to be his last movie. He opened up to Variety about his decision to retire and said that he doesn't know the exact reason for wanting to depart from the acting world. He said, "I haven't figured it out, but it settled on me, and it's just there. I dread to use the overused word artist, but there's something of the responsibility of the artist that hung over me." He also went on to say that he had no desire to watch his last film, and that is when he knew that he needed to stop working as an actor because that connection was gone. Turns out he no longer wanted the glamour, fame, or money. I think you still want the money. He is currently living out of the spotlight and basically off the Hollywood grid altogether. Beginning our countdown, number 10 is Jonathan Bennett. It's been 15 years since he graced our screens as hottie Aaron Samuels in Mean Girls. There is no doubt about it that part of the reason we're obsessed with the movie is because of the unrealistic crush we had on him. I literally thought I was gonna date him. The movie brought in over $100 million at the box office, and people are still quoting it all these years later. After finding success from the 2004 movie, he continued to act, but we kinda saw him just fade away from the Hollywood spotlight. And that is because for a while he chose to focus on other parts of his life outside of the limelight. He got into health and fitness and became a spin instructor at Flywheel Los Angeles in West Hollywood. A few years later, he released his own cookbook, which was actually inspired by Mean Girls, and he titled it The Burn Cookbook. The design even looks like the Burn book from the movie. Talk about a genius marketing plan. In the book, he references quotes from the movie and also put in a toaster doodle recipe inspired by Gretchen Wiener's family. Luckily for us gals, we do see his face popping up here and there on some TV shows and in Ariana Grande's music video. He's found a good balance of a normal life while still pursuing acting to some degree, just not like the Aaron Samuels way. Coming in next, number 9 is Mike Vitter. If you grew up in the 90s, then you probably watched and adored him for his role as Benny Rodriguez, aka the Jet, in the movie Sandlot. He decided to leave his acting career behind just 5 years after his success from Sandlot in 1993. And we only found out what he has been up to because a video went viral of him casually saving a kitten from smoke inhalation after a car explosion. Yes, that is right, he left Hollywood to become a man in uniform, which is never a bad thing. Am I right, ladies? The LA Firemen's Relief Association wrote a birthday post on their Tumblr page that started to gain traction. It showed a picture of him all suited up in his gear and said, "Happy birthday to Los Angeles firefighter Mike Vitter, aka Benny the Jet Rodriguez from the super awesome film The Sandlot." They just had to give him that clout, you know? Unfortunately, people haven't been able to interview him, so it seems like his Hollywood life is really in the past for good. Moving on to number 8, we have Brittany Ashton Holmes. Maybe her real name doesn't ring a bell, but her character name will. She plays Darla in the hit movie The Little Rascals. She won everyone's heart back in 1994, but then disappeared from Hollywood, and people have wondered what happened to her after finding huge success so early in life and then ditching it. She was only 5 years old when she was cast in the movie, and she had no idea that it would turn into a household name. After the movie, she went on to appear in a McDonald's commercial and even appeared in one of the episodes of Ellen. Brittany stuck with acting for 2 years, booking roles in TV movies, but nothing quite like The Little Rascals. But when it came to her teenage years, she stayed away from the spotlight and enjoyed living like any other normal teenage girl. She graduated from high school in California and went to college to study political science. When MySpace was a thing, remember that? Her bio caption was, "I was an actress when I was a little girl and did this movie called The Little Rascals. It's like really embarrassing to watch and I don't want to act anymore." The 30-year-old gal is currently working full-time at DJ Hicklips, which is a music app company. But fans were thrilled to see her join the rest of the cast for a Little Rascals reunion photo shoot in 2014. It was pretty cool to see them all grown up. Not gonna lie. In spot number 7 is Elizabeth Hurley. You probably know her from Austin Powers and from different tabloid headlines. The British bombshell was once an A-list celebrity, but then left the public eye to be a full-time mom. Back in 2005, she announced that she was taking an extended leave of absence from acting so she could focus on raising her son. Since then, she went from the glamour and glitz to the farm life. She admitted that you could find her on a tractor and cutting down hedges and trees. She's basically just a huge outdoors person. On top of the lifestyle and career change, she's focused on a different career path and started her own bikini line called Elizabeth Hurley Beach. When she's not designing bikinis or farming, you can find her being a social media queen. That is right, this girl is Insta famous. As for acting, we saw her make a brief return after her disappearance in 2005. She took on a role in Gossip Girl for a year and then went off the map again. In more recent years, she is making her way back into the scene a little bit by starring in TV series like The Royals and Runaways, but she is the first to admit that she is content with her life of farming, making bikinis, and most importantly, being a good mom. Alright, in the number 6 spot is Kirk Cameron. He was a teen phenom while he played Mike Seaver on the ABC sitcom Growing Pains. The show ran from 1985 to 1992 and set him up for a pretty successful career after that. He was acting for many years before he decided to step away from Hollywood and focus on his religious beliefs. Nowadays, he is an evangelical Christian who is focusing on faith-based projects, some of which have caused a lot of controversy. He landed himself in some heat back in 2012 after doing an interview with Piers Morgan and spoke up against same-sex marriage. He has found some success in his projects though. He actually promoted the film Fireproof, which incorporated teaching kits on marriage and marketed it to churches. It earned $33 million at the box office, which is huge, seeing as his budget was barely anything. From there, he has continued to use his Christian beliefs in his projects. Some have found success, while others have flopped. During an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, he was asked if he misses the days he spent in Hollywood, and he replied with, "I can never forget them. While I don't miss those days, I absolutely love that I have that history with my fans." Halfway through the list, number 5 is Charlie Korsmo. He first became known for being in Steven Spielberg's Peter Pan retelling Hook. He is one of the 2 children who gets kidnapped by the captain. But then he was later known for being a high school nerd who can't seem to fit in at house parties in the movie Can't Hardly Wait. But now he's not really known for any of his roles because he decided to put his acting career to rest and pursue a completely different field. He says that when he made the decision to give acting a break and live a more normal life, he realized that he actually really enjoyed going to school. I don't get people who like school. So he spent years in school and is now an assistant professor of law. He told the Daily that he probably would have been kicked out of Hollywood anyways, so leaving it was a smart move. He said, "I think I managed the trick of leaving voluntarily just about the time I would have been thrown out anyways." Apparently, he says that he'd be losing out on roles regardless as he grew out of his child actor stage. But to me it's like, of course you would with that attitude, Charlie. Have some positivity. Here we are, number 4 with Eric Sullivan. Another Malcolm in the Middle star, Eric played Little Dewey, the youngest brother of the bunch. He was definitely the cutest member of the Wilkerson family, and he was only 14 years old when the series wrapped back in 2006. He is now 27 years old, which is super weird to me to think that we're the same age. He's definitely not the cheeky little boy he was all those years ago. He's a young man now who has kept pretty quiet ever since he left his acting career behind. His last ever acting job was in 2010, and from there he decided to focus on his studies. He's been living a quiet and normal life ever since. Fans did get their hopes up when they saw a picture he posted on his Instagram with his former co-star and brother on the show, Justin Burfield. The 2 of them were sitting behind the scenes of a movie that Justin was producing. It was cool to see them again, but Eric still remains behind the camera, and he's not really anywhere near it, like at all. In our 3rd spot is Freddie Prinze Jr. He was riding high on success when his career took off in the 90s. He starred in movies like I Know What You Did Last Summer and She's All That, and from there we saw him charm us in a handful of movies after that. Most people know him for playing Fred in the live-action Scooby-Doo remakes. He says it's the movie that gets him recognized the most. Well, his exact words were, I quote, "If it's guys, it's Scooby. If it's girls, it's She's All That because you were all in love with me back then." Modest. Well, he's not wrong. Scooby-Doo is also where he starred alongside his wife, Sarah Michelle Gellar, and in 2009 when they decided to start a family, Freddie's priorities had shifted. We started to see less and less of him as the years went on, and he says that he became a full-time dad. But his career focus shifted to cooking, and he released a cookbook in 2016 called Back to the Kitchen. When asked about acting, he said that he is done with that part of his career, but we still see him popping up in some roles here or there. Like some minor stuff. But for the most part, he is happy living his life as a husband, a dad, and apparently a chef. Filling in our number 2 spot is Macaulay Culkin. Pretty much every kid in the world knows him as Kevin McAllister or just the kid from Home Alone. He's mainly known for winning over our hearts throughout the movie series, but he also appeared in 8 other feature films between the years 1990 to 1994. So he was a huge child star at the time, to say the least. Many would predict that his acting career was solid from that point on. But then, which felt like out of nowhere, he quit acting and disappeared from Hollywood altogether. Turns out he wanted to live a normal life, and he ended up moving to Paris Harris. Yes, Harris. He revealed that he spends most of his time writing, painting, and working on a podcast called Bunny Ears with his friend Matt Cohen. After going MIA for many years, he has now made his way back into the limelight to share his story, but he doesn't really care for the fame part of it. He's actually thrilled when people don't recognize him or bring up the Home Alone movies. During an interview with The Blast, he said, "I was going to Paris for a little while and I thought people didn't recognize me, but it was like, no, we recognize you, we just don't care." And I was like, where have you been all my life? We've made it to number 1, you guys, and we have the one and only Gene Hackman. This man deserved to live a regular life after dedicating pretty much his entire life to his acting career. He was an actor for almost 5 decades and he managed to win a handful of awards and nominations for his performances. He has been given the title of one of the greatest actors of all time, and people were sad when he announced in 2004 that he was leaving his career behind. People were shocked, but at the same time, it's like, can we really be that surprised? Like the rest of us, he has to retire at some point. He decided he wanted to focus on writing instead, and since leaving the Hollywood limelight, he has written a number of historical fiction novels that are set in times and places ranging from the Great Depression all the way to the Wild West. So you can still keep up with him, it's just through books nowadays, not on a screen. Starting off our countdown list, number 10 is Cameron Diaz. She has been one of the most loved names in Hollywood and spent many years working as a busy actress, showing up in practically every rom-com there was. That's why people were shocked when she announced that she was going to be leaving her acting career and just wanted to live a regular life with her husband, Benji Madden. The now 46-year-old told InStyle, "I started experiencing fame when I was 22, so 25 years ago. That's a long time. The way I look at it is that I've given more than half of my life to the public. I've done so much, I feel fulfilled with the adventures I've sought out in my life. I am in a great place." Yeah, I'd be in a great place too if I grew up in Hollywood. She's basically set for life, guys. She also said that she doesn't miss performing, so the chances of her making a return are slim. She's currently looking into the landscape of wellness, she said, and says that she has some new projects brewing. So could we be seeing a wellness lifestyle blog or something from her soon? That'd be pretty sweet. I'd probably read it. Up next, number 9 is Danny Lloyd. If you've seen the iconic 1980 horror film The Shining, then you would know Danny Lloyd for playing the little boy, Danny Torrance. He took on the role at 5 years old and played the son of the main character, Jack Torrance, which for a kid would be a dream come true because the movie has gone down in history. But as the young actor started to grow up, he decided to grow away from Hollywood's limelight and live a normal life instead. He did an interview with The Sun and admitted that the money from The Shining helped put him through college, but he ended up working at a Walmart for a while and he even did some pig farming. He's now 47 years old and is working as a science teacher in Kentucky. When talking about his choice to leave his acting career, he said, "There's a feeling I didn't like the movie and I wanted nothing to do with acting. But really, the truth is I kept trying for several years and I stopped at about 14 with almost no success." Fans were hoping they would see him return in the new sequel, Dr. Sleep, which came out this year, but he decided to sit this one out, but he says that he would be watching it. At least he supports it. Next up at number 8 is Steven Seagal. For many years the actor was kicking butt and taking names on the big screen, but then he decided he wanted to do that in real life instead. Back in 2013, he decided to leave his acting career and became a reserve police officer in New Mexico in 2013, which makes sense because throughout his years he's gained a ton of personal knowledge of training and self-defense, so rather than dedicating it to movies, he gave it to the Donna Ana County Police Department. Kelly Jackson, the spokeswoman of the department, spoke with the Los Angeles Times and said, "We could get this type of training elsewhere, but there's just something special about Mr. Seagal." He later went on to be the deputy sheriff for the Jefferson Parish in Louisiana and says that's where he brings in some of the most dangerous criminals. He said, "The thing I like best is forming a team where we can go after high-risk warrants for people who are armed and dangerous, murderers, bank robbers, rapists, kidnappers. Those are the guys I like to get." Now, he's still popping up in movies here and there even though he's technically retired, but things affected his acting career in 2018 when allegations were made that he raped and sexually assaulted 2 women, which he says is completely false and made up. In spot number 7 is Lindsay Lohan. The actress was tired of being judged, so she left, but she didn't just leave Hollywood, she left America. After a whole bunch of chaos in the media for her time in jail, she decided to move to London to find some peace and quiet. She disappeared from our screens, and we later found out that she had moved from London to Dubai to live on the beaches of Mykonos. There was a method to her plan though. She picked Dubai because paparazzi is actually illegal there, so she knew that it was a place to go where she could have some privacy. She told the New York Times that she loves living there and said, "It's less demanding. I don't have to turn on the news and see about the Kardashians. I don't have to see about anything anymore. I choose what I want to see and how I want to live." She's been spending her free time traveling, but she also opened her own beach club on Mykonos beach, so she's busy running her own business now. Fans were thrilled to see her make a return to MTV with her own reality show called Lindsay Lohan's Beach Club. We see her working as a CEO trying to hire people to work at her new beach club. I shamelessly watched it, and I gotta admit, it was pretty cool to see her in a different light like that. Plus, she looks really happy. That makes me happy. And at number 6 is Jonathan Taylor Thomas, also known as JTT. He became a huge child star after voicing the young Simba in Disney's The Lion King, and then preteens fell in love with his character on the hit TV series Home Improvement. He played the role of Randy, Tim Allen's son, throughout the years from 1991 all the way to 1998. The series has become a household name, and people were crushed when he left the show and vanished from Hollywood unexpectedly. He was just 16 years old when he was at the height of success and decided to leave it so that he could live a normal life. He left his acting career and went to Harvard University, where he studied philosophy and history, and then he finished his degree at Columbia University. He spoke on his decision and said, "I wanted to go to school, to travel, and have a bit of a break. To sit in a big library amongst books and students, that was pretty cool. It was a novel experience for me. I never took the fame too seriously. It was a great period of my life, but it doesn't define me." He's now 38 years old and says that he would like to eventually work behind the camera. He still has a passion for TV and film, but does not see himself returning to acting. Halfway through the list, number 5 is Karen Parsons. The actress is best known as Hilary Banks from the hit TV series The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. From 1990 to 1996, Karen played the eldest Banks sibling who was basically the poster child of the 90s. But after the years of French Prince were over, her name started to fade out. She opened up to Vice in a recent interview and said that it was hard to book acting roles after that, and that people didn't care about her time on the show. She said, "Not that I expected people to know who I was, but even when I tried to tell casting directors what I'd done before, they would have no idea. I started feeling really stupid trying to get them to know what Fresh Prince was and who I was on it. It was embarrassing." Alright, well, if she has no luck with that resume, then I'm screwed. Since the series ended in 1996, she's been able to book 8 roles, and none of them that have put her back on the map. She decided to focus on writing, and in 2005 she founded the non-profit organization called Sweet Blackberry, which aims at educating children about African American history. She also has her own book called How High the Moon, and she works full-time on her organization, which has grown from a passion project into a thriving organization with a series of animated short films that are available on DVD and Netflix. So she's done pretty well for herself. Here we are, number 4, with Noah Hathaway. Everyone loves a good comeback story, and he might have one of his own after leaving Hollywood to live a normal life and then wiggling his way back in many years later. He was 12 years old when he had his breakout role in The Never-Ending Story. After the success of the movie, he was able to book other roles, but decided in 1994 that he would leave it all behind. He spoke about it and said, "I worked the first 20-something years of my life as an actor. I just wanted to drop off the radar and be a regular human being." But after his long break, he decided in 2012 to make a return and start in the movie Sushi Girl. From there, he's booked a couple of roles, his biggest one being in Tom Holland's Twisted Tales back in 2014, but his acting career and fame isn't what it used to be, so he still lives a fairly regular lifestyle. But his comeback story is still a good one. He kinda got the best of both worlds. Took a break, came back, once was an actor. I don't know, he's like Hannah Montana right there. In 3rd place is Angus T. Jones. He was one of the cutest child stars of all time when he was starring on the TV series 2.5 Men. He quickly rose to fame for his role as Jake Harper, and he spent over a decade working alongside Charlie Sheen. From the outside looking in, he had his entire future set up at that point. I mean, he was a kid playing a lead role on one of the biggest shows on TV. That's literally every actor's dream. In 2010, he broke the record as the highest paid child star actor in history. He was just 17 years old when he signed a $7.8 million contract for another 2 seasons of the show, which means he was making $300,000 an episode. Must be nice. But the show started to get a bad reputation, and it was because Charlie Sheen's addiction got out of control and he flew off the handlebars, to say the least. And he was fired from the show in 2011. Angus continued working on the show, but as his character grew older, he didn't agree with some of the things that he was scripted to do, like romantic scenes or scenes with illegal substances. In 2012, he shifted his focus towards religion and God and realized that the show contradicted everything he believed in. He ended up leaving the show when he went online to try and get fans to stop watching it, calling the show show filth. From that point on, he attended the University of Colorado and studied environmental studies, but then changed his major to Jewish studies. In the number 2 spot is Sarah Michelle Gellar, because I think it's only fair that we put his wife on this list since they both left Hollywood together. The beautiful actress became known for her iconic role as Buffy Summers in the hit TV series Buffy the Vampire Slayer. After finding success from that show, her career took off and we started to see her in other things like Scooby-Doo, The Grudge, The Crazy Ones, Cruel Intentions, and even The Big Bang Theory. But her career started to slow down as well when she became a mom, and it looked like she wasn't going to bless us on our screen ever again. She too turned to a food business just like her husband Freddie. She's the co-founder of an organic baking company called Foodsters. She's openly talked about her experience of leaving the acting industry to become a full-time entrepreneur. She told Forbes, "Being an entrepreneur is like shooting a movie that films 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's definitely a constant learning curve." On top of that, she also wrote a cookbook of her own called Stirring Up Fun with Food. So basically these two left acting to be parents, write cookbooks, and start their own food company. Couple goals. Taking the number 1 spot on today's list is Justin Bieber. At one point in time, he was the one celebrity we saw all over the media. Becoming one of the biggest pop stars at such a young age ended with him wanting a more normal life. The singer is originally from a small town called Stratford, Ontario, here in Canada, which is only a few hours away from us, by the way, which is really cool. But a few years ago, we could tell that the fame seemed to be getting to him. It all started when he announced that he was no longer going to be taking pictures with fans out in public. His music career took a long break and he slowly started disappearing from the charts. After being engaged to his now wife, Hailey Baldwin, it was announced that he wanted to move from LA and permanently live in Canada, away from the limelight and paparazzi. One of his friends spoke about it to Us Weekly and said he needs to get out of the LA and New York City scene. It's overwhelming for him. He's trying to climatize what a normal life should look like. He feels most at peace at home. He's been living a quiet life here in Canada since 2018 and recently revealed that new music will be coming in 2020. He has been open about his struggle with anxiety and depression, and living a regular life has given him some time to heal. So maybe this will be his big comeback. But I feel like his life will never really be truly regular. It's just a more regular than like what he's used to. Fun fact though, he was at that Tim Hortons here in Canada with Hailey. Starting off at number 10 is Carly Schroeder. The Lizzie McGuire actress traded in her childhood fame to enlist in the army and be an advocate for human trafficking victims. She first announced her big change in February 2019, where she wrote, "For 22 years I've played dress up for a living. I tormented Lizzie McGuire's little brother on the Disney Channel, was a dolphin trainer, the first female soccer player on an all-boys team, and Harrison Ford once rescued me during an intense home invasion. I've been considering it for a while and it was a big choice." She opened up about her decision with TMZ and said that her dad was in the army as a Green Beret medic and her younger brother is in the Marines also. When she wasn't acting, she was spending time working with veterans and advocating for human trafficking victims, which is what ultimately led to her decision. Carly documented some of her training on her Instagram, and in all fairness, she didn't really ditch fame for a regular life. She left Hollywood to fight for her country. So, round of applause for her, because not many people will do that, like me. I'm too fragile for the army. I get killed immediately. First day in training. Up next, number 9 is the one and only Meg Ryan. She was one of Hollywood's biggest actors for many years before she decided to step away from her career. People were rightfully confused with her decision, but got some clarity after she spoke about it on Gwyneth Paltrow's panel discussion. During the interview, she explained, "I didn't really aim to be an actor. I was a journalism major at school and a curious person, and I wanted to go back out into the world and figure out who I was." The height of her fame came when she starred with Tom Hanks in the 1998 movie You've Got Mail. From that moment on, she was labeled as America's sweetheart, but she decided to step out of the spotlight and you will rarely find her at public events anymore. She's openly admitted that she had a lot of fun in her career but never enjoyed the idea of being a famous person and having everyone know everything about you. She's been laying low until more recently in October of this year, when it made headlines that she and her fiance John Mellencamp called off their engagement after being together for 8 years. So even though she is trying to dodge the spotlight, they somehow still found her. Cruising to the number 8 spot is Dave Chappelle. For more than 30 years, he's been known in the world of comedy for making people laugh, but then he earned himself the title of the guy who walked away from Hollywood at the height of his success. His show on Comedy Central, Chappelle's Show, was in its prime when he decided to literally ditch and fly to Africa to live a normal life. This is not an exaggeration, that is exactly what he did. He recently came back to comedy and has a Netflix special, which received mixed reviews by the way, in case you're maybe wanting to watch it. But even though he's making a return, he is still trying to keep a low profile because that is where he feels comfortable. He spoke with CBC News and said that he isn't a fan of fame. He said, "Fame is a horrifying concept when it is aimed at you. At the end of the day, you don't have that much control over it. I found an altitude I was comfortable with. I found a way to do what I like to do and avoid some of the parts that I was uncomfortable with." As for his show, he said that he will not be returning to it. He literally pieced out to Africa and was gone from Hollywood for years, so the fact that he can just like walk back in like this is pretty impressive. Next up at number 7 we have Jeff Cohen, also known as Chunk from The Goonies. The actor doesn't have to do the truffle shuffle anymore, if you know what I mean. He was a child actor when he started as the pudgy character in the classic 80s film, and that is part of the reason why he says acting never worked out for him. After the film he continued to pursue acting for 6 years, up until 1991, but as he grew older he says that the competition got stronger and his chubby look wasn't booking him any roles. So by the time he reached his teenage years he was already living a normal life and enjoying it. He went to the University of California, Berkeley to study law and later became an entertainment lawyer in Los Angeles. He is currently working as a lawyer, which all began after he started his own law firm back in 2002 called Cohen & Gardner. He also writes for the Huffington Post, which I think is pretty freaking cool. Here now at number 6 we have Shirley Temple. She started her acting career at the young age of 3 and became Hollywood's biggest box office child star in the 30s. If you don't know who I'm talking about, she's the girl who sang that famous song "Animal Crackers in My Soup." I literally sang it every time I had a bowl of soup as a kid. Probably still do. By the time she was 12 she starred in 43 movies and a bunch of commercials. But when she turned 22 years old she decided she wanted to give all of that up and live a normal life outside of the spotlight. She ended up changing her career path entirely and actually ran for Congress in 1967. Unfortunately she lost, but then 2 years later she was appointed to represent the US at the United Nations. And then later down the road she became the US ambassador to Ghana from 1974 to 1976. Who would have thought the animal cracker girl would end up in politics? Sadly, she did pass away in 2014 at the age of 85, but her memory lives on forever in both Hollywood and in politics. It's kinda like she lived 2 different lifetimes, like in one, which is pretty sweet. Halfway through our list at number 5 is Peter Ostrom, also known as Charlie Bucket in the original 1971 Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. He was just 12 years old when he was selected to play the role, and although he really enjoyed being in the movie, he ultimately decided not to sign a 3-film contract when the movie was over. When he returned home from filming, he says he grew an interest in horses and instead wanted to become a veterinarian one day, which is why he went to the Cornell University College of Veterinary Medicine in 1984 to receive his certificate. Later on in 2005, he moved to New York with his wife and 2 children, and as of 2018 he works out of the Countryside Veterinary Clinic, where it was reported that he mainly works with horses and cows. As for giving up his acting career, he says that he wanted to live a normal life and decline reporters and interviews for a long period of time. When he finally spoke about his decision, he said, "I wanted people to judge me on who I was, not what I'd done." He also told a funny story that sometimes in his childhood he would lie and tell people that it was his brother in the movie, not him. But I feel like that's a win for his brother to get credit for something he wasn't a part of. Like, I would say that I was the kid in Willy Wonka. That's sweet. Here we are at number 4 with Michael Scheffling. Even though he had a short 7-year career in Hollywood in the 80s, he is still famously known for his breakout role as Jake Ryan in 16 Candles. Most people would agree that he was lined up to have a pretty bright future with acting, but then he walked away from it to live a normal life with his family in Pennsylvania. He's remembered as the 80s teen heartthrob, but he is now 58 years old, which makes me feel really old. He also modeled for magazines like GQ during his career before calling it quits in 1991. He completely vanished, but he has done a few interviews with magazines and newspaper articles, giving us any kind of update on what he has been up to. Since leaving the industry, he moved back to Pennsylvania, where he was born and raised, and went into carpentry. When asked why he left in the first place, he said it was because of the lack of good acting roles, and because he had to support a growing family at the time and acting was not cutting it. You know what they say, starving artist, and that is a real thing. Today his net worth is estimated to be a modest $500,000, but he still has a successful business back home and a very loving family. In the 3rd spot is Nikki Blonsky, mainly known for her role as Tracy Turnblad in the musical movie Hairspray, starring alongside Zac Efron and John Travolta. The movie came out back in 2007, which marked her first on-screen acting role and a big one at that. After After that, you might have watched her in the short-lived ABC Family series called Huge. Since then, she booked smaller roles here and there, but it wouldn't be enough to support someone as a full-time income, which is why she had to take a step back and live a more ordinary life. In 2011, the actress did an interview with E! And said that she worked at a shoe store in New York City and was later hired as a cosmetologist at a hair salon. She went on to get her cosmetology license, and she began working part-time as a hairstylist and makeup artist in between acting auditions. Now, she's a little different than the other ones on our list because she didn't choose to live a normal life, it was actually her only choice. She did an interview in 2017 and said, "I did not take a conscious step out of Hollywood, and so long as I'm alive, I never will. Singing and acting has been my dream since I was 3. It kind of feels like the industry left me." Honestly, that makes me sad. Kinda breaks my heart a little bit. I hope she comes back. Coming into our number 2 slot is Heather Donahue. She found herself on the fast track to fame after taking the lead role in the successful movie The Blair Witch Project. But the attention didn't sit well with her, and she really didn't want any part of it. She dabbled in it and booked roles here and there until 2008 when she decided that it was not the life for her. So what did she do after leaving her acting career? She went on to grow marijuana for a living. And no, this is not a joke. It all began in 2007 when she received her own prescription of medical marijuana, and she realized the benefits that it could have on other people. So she started her own farm and started to grow it on her own. She even wrote a book called Grow Girl: How My Life After the Blair Witch Project Went to Pot. As for her experience in Hollywood, she doesn't have any positive things to say. In fact, she burned all of her stuff. She told the Daily Mail, "I took all my stuff into the desert related to my acting career and burned it all. The only thing I kept was the blue ski cap from the movie poster. I figured if things got really bad, I could sell it on eBay." Well, at least she has a backup plan, right? Taking over the number 1 spot is Jack Gleeson. This one is especially painful for all the Game of Thrones fans. Jack took on the role of the evil King Joffrey for 3 years, but decided to walk away from it and acting altogether. Instead of pursuing an acting career, he decided to move back home and attend Trinity College in Dublin, where he studied philosophy and theology. There wasn't any bad blood between him and the show, he just didn't like the idea of fame and everything that kind of came with it. During an interview, he said he actually hated celebrity culture. The 27-year-old is enjoying his normal life now, and he founded his own theater company called Collapsing Horse Theater Company, which is actually based in Dublin. Still plenty of time to make a return to Hollywood though, you never know. And let's not forget he has Game of Thrones on his resume forever now, which is pretty sweet, and I'm sure he can come back at any time.